before the Cold War to understand some terminology. When the English were conquering the world, when the English were making the world England, they didn't finish, obviously. They didn't finish. They got 40% done and they ran out of steam. But 40% is amazing. Think about it, that tiny, itty-bitty, teeny-weeny little island where they boil their steak and fry their tomatoes, where it's always raining, somehow conquered 40% of the planet. I still can't wrap my mind around it. They only ruled it for 200 years, but still. I don't even know what to make of that. That's talent. There was talent there. I'm not denying the talent. Just incredible talent, because a lot of it wasn't violence, right? The English would plant a flag, and the Indians are looking at it going, what is that? It's a flag. What does it do? It means we conquered you. And the Indians are like, oh, crap! You mean if we had gotten to your tiny little island and planted the Indian flag, we would have conquered you? And the English were like, yep, that's how this works. We got you. So there was a little bit of psyching them out, right? That was also going on. So, when the English had done this, they decided that they needed to make this idea of the East. There needed to be this concept of the East, the other, the nefarious, the sneaky, the mysterious, the strange. And so they came up with this idea of making the East being basically Asia, and then going from there. Now, the Romans had this a little bit, and the Greeks had this a little bit. So it wasn't that the English made it up completely from their own minds. For the Greeks, it was the Persians. For the Romans, it was still the Persians. And so the English kind of had, oh yeah, this worked really well for the Greeks and the Romans. We want to have this for ourselves. So what they did was they named the far end of Asia the Far East. They took the southern middle part of Asia and they called it the Middle East. And then they took the western end of Asia and they called it the Near East because it was near Europe. In other words, what we call the Middle East was the Near East. What we call South Asia was the Middle East. The Near East is what we call the Middle East today. What we call South Asia today was the Middle East. But then the Cold War started. And we Americans went, we can keep this East-West thing going, but now we need the Russians to be the East, because the East is evil and dangerous and exotic and strange. So we'll make the Russians the new Near East, and we'll do the Eastern Bloc states as the new Near East. But if that's the Near East, then the Middle East can't be the Near East anymore. So we renamed the Near East the Middle East, but then we needed a new name for the old Middle East, so we named it South Asia in our new naming scheme. The Eastern Bloc states and the Soviet Union, it never caught. Nobody started calling that the Near East. But they did call it the East and the Eastern Bloc. In other words, it partially worked. It worked well enough. It got what they wanted. And now, in effect, what they had done was they had successfully divorced East Germany East from Western civilization in the minds of people. But this isn't the first time that somebody has divorced Western civilization from the minds of people. We had already done it to Egypt and Iraq. Right? I just got through showing you that the West was founded in Egypt and Iraq, and yet somehow we believe it's not in the West. In fact, even Middle Easterners will say it's not in the West. It's part of everybody's understanding of the world now. And this is, of course, at the heart of Orientalism, because the goal is to make it seem that the East is irrational. It's inefficient. It's authoritarian. And the West is democratic and liberated. And everybody's happy. It's all about ice cream. We build it into everything. So I don't know if you've ever watched The Man in the High Tower. It's probably not worth watching. The first season is. The first season was really, really amazing. But then after that, it kind of falls apart a little bit. And you could tell they just didn't know where to go. but it's about what would have happened if Japan and Germany had won World War II. And so it's really weird watching Americans walking around in SS uniforms, goose stepping around. It's just like, oh God.